Federal government has devoted a lot of money to expanding internet connectivity throughout the country, reinforcing some areas while expanding to entirely new areas that were once underserved. Much of the reach and penetration of the telecommunication wiring for internet will be running on utility poles. Third-party pole attachment is the lingo, and we're going to get a robust look with our next guest from one of the largest infrastructure engineering firms in the United States, next on Power Perspectives. I'm Jason Price, your host, coming to you from New York City. With me, as always, is Energy Central producer and community manager Matt Chester, joining us from Orlando, Florida. Matt, have you seen the topic of ISPs and their interplay with the power utility sector coming up on the pages of Energy Central?
What I'll say about the topic, Jason, is it does get mentioned and asked about a decent amount, but we don't get as much coverage of people sharing their insights, developments, and expertise as I would hope we should. I think it's a topic where a lot of people in the utility sector, they're playing catch up. They're still learning about it. And so having some insights to sink our teeth into today, I think that'll go a long way.
Thanks, Matt. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to thank Burns McDonnell, our sponsor of today's show. To give us the expert insight on that topic, our guest today is Adam Rehfeld, Business Line Manager for Distribution Modernization at Burns McDonnell. Adam will help us understand how utilities are managing pole attachments in the context of regulatory change, increasing demand, and federal funding. Adam Rehfeld, welcome to the Energy Central Power Perspectives podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason and Matt. Excited to be here on Power Perspectives and looking forward to our discussion today.
Fantastic. Adam, before we dive into this critical topic, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. What exactly is it that you do as Business Line Manager for Distribution Modernization at Burns McDonnell, and how did you find yourself in that role?
Sure. Well, I've spent my entire 20-year career in the power industry, with most of that time focused on consulting for the electric distribution side. As a business line manager at Burns McDonnell, my role is really about understanding where the distribution industry is heading and making sure we're positioned to support our clients effectively. That means everything from recruiting and managing our team to exploring new technologies and partnerships that will keep us at the forefront. But really, at the end of the day, it's about making a positive impact, just helping our clients navigate challenges and find solutions that support their goals and the communities they serve. That's what keeps me passionate about this work every day, Jason, is just knowing that what we do matters and helps keep the lights on for so many.
That's great. Thank you. And now let's shift to the big picture topic of your work, which is the third-party attachments in the utility space. So help us understand what exactly is now a critical moment for utility leaders to be more aware of what's going on in this part of the industry, and how have these TPAs evolved over time?
Absolutely. So, historically, attachments were a pretty straightforward part of utility operations. Fiber build over the last decade has had its ebbs and flows, but generally has been manageable by a very, very small contingent within a given electric utility. I mean, sometimes it's literally one or two people overseeing a million poles that handle those attachment requests. But things are definitely starting to change. What used to be a smaller scale process is becoming a significant part of planning and managing infrastructure. The big reason for that demand, though, is for connectivity is just skyrocket. I mean, think about it. Every day in the news, we see advancements of AI and data center demands across the U.S. And so many of us are beginning to use these technologies at our jobs and in our everyday life. But to make use of it, you need high-speed internet. And ISPs recognize this demand, and their actions are starting to reflect that, with sometimes dramatic increases in attachment requests. What used to be maybe 100 poles per month is now in the thousands routinely. So they're just trying to grow their networks quickly and edge out their competition, especially with federal funding and regulatory pushes to bridge the digital divide. The sheer volume and pace of requests mean utilities have to be more proactive and agile, which likely means doing things differently to keep up. So utility leaders need to be tuned into these changes to make sure everything stays safe, reliable, and compliant as we move forward, because their number one priority to their customers is that we don't want to see the electrical infrastructure be jeopardized by supporting a speed to market by the ISPs.
Yeah, I want to probe that a bit further. I want you to talk about, this ongoing influx of federal funding for third-party attachments, especially with the goal of increasing the offerings available to underserved and unserved areas. So what are the challenges of those untapped areas, and is federal funding itself enough to change the tides? And more importantly, what is the future of this funding, particularly with the change of administration?
Yeah, that's a key issue right now, Jason. So there are definitely some unique challenges in reaching those underserved or unserved areas. A big one is simply infrastructure. Those areas often don't have the foundational setup that makes attachment projects easy or quick to roll out. Poles might be poor condition or in remote locations, what can drive up costs and just make it less attractive for ISPs to build out. The big federal funding program out there to help overcome this is the BEAD program, or the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment, which is part of the IIJ. With a massive budget of $42 billion, its goal is essentially to provide each state funding to be awarded to applicants who intend to use that funding to help provide service to those without high-speed internet access. Federal funding is an incredible help, but it's not necessarily a silver bullet. Funding can cover a lot of the initial costs, but for sustainable impact, there also needs to be collaboration between utilities, local governments, and ISPs to overcome logistical challenges that just make these projects viable in the long term. So while the federal funding is a huge step in the right direction, real change will come from partnerships and well thought out strategies to work together efficiently and effectively to make those dollars count.
That's great. That's great context. So, Adam, I want to ask you about this lack of awareness that the utilities have, even of their own inventory. And in fact, I will share with you recent conversations with one utility in the Midwest where they don't even number their poles, so they have to describe it based on where on the street it's located. So this whole idea of awareness is really a challenge. How does this complicate the situation, and what are the technological solutions that you're seeing roll out to improve this aspect of tracking and overall data management of the utility poles?
Yeah, that's a really important point. Maybe to paint a picture, just ISPs and utilities generally have very different objectives when it comes to fiber. For an ISP, the goal is to build out their fiber network as quickly and efficiently as possible, be able to sign up customers in their respective territory. But to do that, they have to rely on the pole owners to authorize attachment. And the utility is obviously much more focused on providing reliable power to those same customers. So fiber attachments have not exactly been a priority. It has led to many ISPs installing fiber without notification or proper documentation. So when utilities don't have a clear inventory of what's attached to their poles, it creates a lot of challenges. Without the accurate data, it's difficult to assess whether those poles have the capacity to safely handle new attachments, which can lead to delays and even safety risks. In addition, it really can slow down what should otherwise be a quick process, because the utility might need existing attachers to adjust or even transfer to a new pole, but don't even know who to contact. Fortunately, technology is making a big difference here. We're seeing utilities adopt digital solutions like GIS-based tracking systems, where all the pole-related data, location, structure, current attachments, that can all be stored and updated in real time. But boots on the ground to go document every pole attachment is both resource limited as well as cost prohibitive when you're talking about taking inventory of an entire city just to gather historical information. Burns McDonnell, for instance, uses drones and other field technologies to help gather this information much more quickly and accurately. And by centralizing this data and making it accessible, utilities can make faster, more informed decisions and keep up with the demand for new attachments without a negative impact on the electric service.
Yeah, that's helpful. I want to ask more about some of the innovations going on in this space, particularly, current trends that you may be seeing. I'm aware of undergrounding, there's a lot more distribution coming on, distributed generation, and even smart grid technologies. So how do these types of trends impact the needs and strategies with third-party attachments?
Yeah, well, Jason, all these trends, undergrounding, distribution generation, smart grid tech, they're all reshaping the grid in big ways. For example, you mentioned undergrounding. There's a growing shift from overhead poles to buried infrastructure for reliability improvements. And that changes how and where attachments are feasible for third parties, right? So in some cases, utilities have to offer to do a joint trench with the telecoms and ISPs to share an undergrounding cost and be able to completely eliminate the need for the poles. Since these are areas that are typically already built out, the ISPs might not have budgeted anything to convert to underground in that area. And so it's difficult to justify doing so, which results in both poles and pad-mounted equipment for the new underground electric, which generally leaves unhappy customers. So overall, these trends mean that utilities and ISPs have to be more forward-thinking and adaptable with their attachment strategies. It's about building flexibility into the grid and embracing new technologies that make managing all these moving parts more seamless.
Yeah, it can be quite a challenge, no doubt. So how about this, Adam? Walk us through a concrete example or case study of you and your team helping out a utility. Take us through, how does the engagement start? What is the timeline of the type of project you might be servicing? And how does the collaborative process between the utility and a company like Burns McDonnell work?
Yeah, so since Burns McDonnell provides engineering and program management services for utilities across the country, we've seen the strain firsthand on the individuals supporting the TPA programs. Oftentimes, though, it really just starts as a simple conversation where the utility doesn't even know that this is a service we provide. Well, I'll keep it confidential. One of the utilities we started working with kicked off with simply looking for a couple of folks to help support overflow application reviews And within 3 months, it turned into a team of 20 providing full-time support because they were just being inundated with applications, and they realized that this was the better option for them. One of the best ways to start is just simply a small assessment of their current workflow, all the way from application intake through make-ready construction. Our goal is to help our clients streamline their process, that not only stay compliant with regulations, but without all the headaches of trying to scale something that probably wasn't built for what lies ahead.
I want to talk about the influx of federal funding. Let's go back to that for a moment. I'm sure there's another side to the coin in regulation and permitting besides the federal funding that plays a prominence in all this. How does this type of, red tape and the regulatory side get in the way of making such decisions or implementations? Talk to us about that. And do you have some changes you'd like to see in the regulatory side that may basically benefit everyone?
Well, this could probably be its own standalone topic for discussion. As anytime you talk about federal funding and state-driven processes, you can imagine these things do take longer than we'd all like. But with respect to BEAD, it's been years in the making, yet I believe only the state of Louisiana has actually awarded funds to applicants. So everything I'm hearing, though, is that most states will make awards in 2026, if not sooner. But naturally, the recent change in administration following the general election has added some ambiguity, but I believe there's still bipartisan support for the program. In reality, it's probably impossible to put the toothpaste back in the tube at this point, so be prepared to see those application requests go up as much as fivefold over the next 18 months. From a regulatory perspective, I know the FCC rolled out new cost-sharing expectations recently, which has really driven further divide between the utilities and ISPs, and feels like will continue to be a sticking point for the foreseeable future. This has to be a primary focus to find common ground. And one area that we're working to improve this is by operating a platform that provides cost transparency to all the stakeholders. I do suspect the new administration to reduce regulations, which again should expedite the fiber build out further, but a lot of that's yet to be seen. One improvement I'd like to see more standardized, streamlined process for permitting, one that balances protection of the communities with the pace of demand. I know we're already exploring fast-tracking permitting for certain projects, which could be a model for others. But in general, coordination between local, state, and federal agencies could really help minimize a lot of these bottlenecks, just making the whole process more efficient without compromising the oversight that's necessary to ensure there's no negative impacts to the communities as well.
And Brian, back to the federal funding, are you referring to the BEAD's funding, or is there a different type of classification?
BEAD is the primary funding mechanism that's out there right now.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, hey, Adam, this is great insight, great, firsthand knowledge and experience here. Really exciting and really interesting, the kind of work you're doing and what the country's facing through this telecommunication transformation that's going on in the role of the utility. So thank you for, giving us some insight here. At this point in the show, we have what's called a lightning round, which gives us an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you, the person, rather than you, the professional. So we're going to throw a bunch of questions at you, about 5 or 6, and we ask you to keep your answer to one word or phrase. So, Adam, are you ready?
I'll try my best.
All right. What's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Well, these days I'm coaching my son's 4th grade basketball team in the evening, so that's not a lot of wind down time, but it's a lot of fun. He's pretty good, so that helps too. Good.
I could probably use some tips there with the basketball coaching I'm involved with. All right. If you could choose any superpower, what would it be?
So this one makes me laugh because normally you'd probably hear flying or invisibility or something like that. But someone said something in a meeting to answer this question recently that I recall. And I'm going to steal it here because it just made me laugh. But their response was the ability to never get mosquito bites. I just thought that was brilliant because so many beautiful summer nights ruined by mosquitoes. So that'll be mine.
What's the most rewarding part of your job?
Oh, hands down, it's definitely the people I work with. We talk about advancements in technology and process improvements, but at the end of the day, to me, it just still comes down to enjoying working with the person next to you.
Nice. We're collecting lightning round questions from past podcast guests to ask future guests. So this next question comes from Veronica Uncono of the National Wildlife Federation. Left this question for a future guest. What is one accomplishment you have achieved that you would be excited to share with your younger self?
Oh, wow. Well, I've always been more the traditional engineer introvert. So, knowing that I'd eventually be in a role where I could help the direction of the industry and just support clients navigating big challenges like this, that'd probably be pretty exciting. Not to mention doing a podcast like this. So I think in that sense, my younger self would be proud of how far I've come.
Nice. Now it's your turn. What lightning round question do you want to challenge a future guest to answer? And of course, it can be topical, related to energy, or it can be an off-the-wall question.
Sure. I guess my question would be, if you could implement one new technology or innovation in the energy industry with just unlimited resources, what would it be and why? Because I'd always love to see how people in the industry would dream big if there were just no budget or resource constraints. So that would be my question.
All right, I like that one. And then lastly, what are you most motivated by?
Well, professionally, it's definitely getting that feedback from our customers that they're just so relieved that what they have a team they can rely on is making a difference in their daily lives. At home, I'm all about my 3 children. And in this regard, it's good to know that what I do for a living will benefit them as well. And I can tell you, they use our high-speed internet daily, so I know firsthand how important it can be.
Well, fantastic, Adam. Great job in the lightning round. And knowing that, and we said I was going to give you the final word, so knowing that our listeners are utility CEOs, executives, and decision makers, knowing you have their ear for a moment more, what's the key takeaway and insight you hope they really take away from today's conversation?
Yeah, well, first off, just like to thank you, Jason, and Energy Central for inviting me to speak today. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully your listeners have gotten something out of it as well. Just like to take this opportunity to share that Burns McDonnell is ranked number 1 in T&D as an engineering construction services provider to utilities in all 50 states. Distribution is one of our largest areas of focus, and it's certainly a passion of mine. That includes third-party attachments. If you're an electric utility for a municipality, cooperative, or an IOU, are already seeing an influx of applications, or just want to be prepared for the impacts of BEAD in the future, we offer right-sized program management services to be your easy button and put you in a position to be a success story with your customers and communities, how to ensure everyone has access to high-speed internet and reliable electric power. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Sound words. And Adam, I'm sure your younger self would be really proud of the work you're doing. So nice going there.
I appreciate it.
And we appreciate you and your time here. So we want to thank you. We want to thank the audience that's listening in and encourage them to post questions and comments. And Adam, certainly continue to stay engaged with the community because I'm sure you're going to get some insightful questions and follow up from today's episode. So thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you as well.
And you can always reach Adam through the Energy Central platform where he welcomes your questions and comments. We also want to give a shout out of thanks to the podcast sponsors that made today's episode possible. Thanks to Burns McDonnell. At Burns McDonnell are engineers, construction professionals, architects, planners, technologists, and scientists do more than plan, design, and construct. With a mission unchanged since 1898, make our clients successful. Our team partners with you on the toughest challenges, constantly working to make the world an amazing place. Each professional brings an ownership mentality to projects at our 100% employee-owned firm, which has safety performance among the top 5% of AEC firms. That means we think like owners, working through each challenge until it's resolved, meeting or exceeding our clients' goals. Once again, I'm your host, Jason Price. Plug in and stay fully charged in the discussion by hopping into the community at energycentral.com, and we'll see you next time at the Energy Central Power Perspectives Podcast.